Welcome back to Not Alone with Melissa Sue Methvin. Like every episode, I like to start with a few grounding breaths. So if you want, place a hand on the heart, one on the belly, and close your eyes. We're going to take a deep breath through the nose and a long exhale through the nose. Let's do that a few more times. Inhale through the nose and a long exhale through the nose. I always love to start with a breath because oftentimes we are moving so fast paced that we never start to slow down. And it helps me and you to get grounded before we dive into truth, stories, and also making you feel like you're not alone, trying to seek truth and decipher what is real, what is not when it comes to your own health. I'm a big advocate to teach you to become your own advocate. With my book, The Get God Connection, that is what I'm trying you to do, is to become your own health advocate and how to listen to each whisper. And I also am a true believer that oftentimes chronic illness, the root cause will start in the mouth, and it's often the last place we look at. So now with each guest, each expert that I have on, I'm allowing you to educate yourself. And now it'll be up to you to make that decision, that next step. But without your health, you can't take care of your children. Without your health, you can't live life with vitality and peace and joy. So this is a gift to give you this knowledge. Knowledge is power. So today I am so excited to have another fellow dental hygienist. I think this is the first one that I've had on that's another dental hygienist. And her name is Amber White, all the way from New York. Is that right?
I'm in Rhode Island, not far from New York.
In Rhode Island. Okay. And how I found her on social media, and every post that she had on, I resonated with, talking about the nervous system, how the mouth is connected to every other organ in your body, gut health, nutrition. And now she's educating other professionals, right? And you're educating patients because it is so hard to find this information. She has now created her own courses because I know for me as a dental hygienist, I didn't start off as a biological dentist for years and years. I've been a dental hygienist for 17 years now. It's only been maybe a year and a half now. However, the idea of fluoride never sat right with me. That's from the beginning. Actually, I still remember having patients in my chair going, I don't want fluoride. I was like, yeah, it's okay. Just don't tell my husband who was a dentist as well and worked for. But it's always been kind of a knowing that maybe what we were taught might have not been the right way for moving forward. There's new evidence. And so welcome today. I'm excited to share your knowledge and your point of view.
Thank you so much for having me, Melissa. I'm so excited to sit down with you today.
Yes, me too. Me too. I'm always so curious because I'm finding a common thread of like, where was that pivotal moment where you changed in your career? How long have you been a dental hygienist for now?
So I've been a dental hygienist for just over 10 years. And honestly, I found biological dentistry pretty early on in my career.
Wow, that's fantastic.
I've been in the biological dental space for about 8 years.
And what brought you there? I'm so curious.
Yeah. So I went to dental hygiene school a little bit later. I had already gone to school for psychology, got my bachelor's in that. And then later I went to dental hygiene school. And just like you said, you always had kind of an inner knowing that fluoride wasn't right. I was even questioning that in school. Something never sat right with me. I was never the favorite student because I was always questioning everything. And then so I got a job, a few different offices out of hygiene school, practicing very traditional practices, family practice, periodontal practices. And I was just early on, like I said, I started wanting to know more. I was like noticing patterns in my patients where they were coming in every 6 months or every 3 months or every 4 months, and they were presenting the exact same way. So everything I was doing in that appointment, it wasn't holding, right? And so I felt like there had to be more to the story, and I didn't feel like I had really all the tools to be able to guide my patients to really shift what was happening, right? They were still coming back with inflammation, bleeding response, cavities. So I started diving deeper into nutrition back then because I didn't even know what biological dentistry was at the time. But I just knew I always had an interest in nutrition. I was really into cooking, really into like local produce and all of the things. And so I started taking nutrition courses. And then I just happened to find a biological practice that was opening in my area. And I was fortunate enough to get a position there at the startup practice and really just started wanting to learn. Once I was there, I like had to learn everything. So I started taking courses, had amazing mentors, and just really just never looked back to the traditional model.
I love that. I love that because it's so true. As a hygienist, we're all about preventative health, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's why people come usually every 6 months, and then we get taken almost personal. Of course, it's the patient has to do the work as well, but first starting to educate them, and they're continuing the work at home too, but nothing's moving, right? We're still seeing a lot of bleeding. We're still seeing gingivitis, periodontal disease, and so something's got to shift. So you're so curious, like I am. It's like, well, what else can we shift? And how nutrition plays a big role for the mouth. People might be like, well, how does nutrition? Well, this is the first entry, but also what kind of acids you have in your gut, and if you're taking on the right nutrients, are you able to absorb nutrients, right? So that you started incorporating nutrition. I think that is so important as a dental hygienist to educate patients. Like I know some talk a little bit about it, but it should be a big portion, gut health, oral biome, doing the oral biome test to know what bacteria is in there. What are we working with is very, very important, but it's not status quo as far as treatment plan.
Yeah, it definitely is not something. Sure, we talk about the frequency of the things we're consuming, snacking, things like that, but we're never really talking like what foods actually are optimal for oral health, what foods are actually going to change the oral microbiome, or what is hurting it. So I think nutrition plays such a role in healing, in how well our tissue responds, how, also chewing, right? That's a huge factor for having these soft diets. We're not developing our airway. We're not developing our jaw structure, our facial muscles, tongue muscles. So many things with nutrition is such a huge piece too.
So once you started working at the biological dentist, were you able to see more of a better optimization of your patients over time because of the treatments you're incorporating?
Yes, absolutely. So I think everything changed when I started at that practice. And I started as a hygienist and I ended up gradually moving into management of this startup. And it was not just a biological dental practice, it was biological, dental, and medical. So we
Okay.
were doing dentistry, but we were also able to bring in other healing modalities. So our patients were getting IVs after surgery, or we were using red light, or we were doing different things to support detoxification with smart removal. So we're always really involving the body in the healing process and creating plans for patients that looked far beyond the mouth and really looked at how we can actually support the nervous system before healing, like things that are really going to really change the trajectory of a patient's health. So
Yeah, instead of seeing the mouth as one, we're just going to focus on this because I'm a hygienist, I'm a dentist, but no, seeing the body as a whole. And I love that it's not just working just yourself, right? You're going to have other modalities alongside because we're treating the whole body. I'd love to be curious. I love that you mentioned nervous system, how important it is to prep the body before any procedure with the nervous system.
yeah, I mean, the nervous system, we know there's no healing if we can't get our patients into parasympathetic state. And also, I think as practitioners, we need to come into those treatment rooms in a parasympathetic state. We can't come in fight or flight, or how is that going to reflect on our patients and their healing capacity? So it really is creating an environment for healing in the body, but also in the interaction between the clinicians, practitioners, and patients.
I love that. Tell me about your programs that you have right now that you're incorporating. Are you teaching patients, or you're working alongside patients? And I think I noticed that you're also teaching other providers, right?
Yeah, so I do have a course working with providers called Beyond the Mouth. So it really goes into what biological dentistry is, assessing our patients through this whole new lens, looking at the terrain, the nervous system, minerals, hormones, all the different things, all the different healing modalities that we can bring in. And ultimately, like, what is the healing capacity that our patients hold? Because we can have two patients come into the practice for the same exact treatment, but they're presenting with different physiology. So the way we approach that treatment has to be different. And so it really is being able to personalize everything to our patients. And then I do work with dentists who are either opening practices or are making the shift to this biological model,
Because that could be so overwhelming. Where do
yeah,
you start, right?
exactly. As you know, it's like such a paradigm shift. And where do you even begin with this information? And sometimes you may have taken a lot of coursework, but how do you actually implement that into your practice? Because we've all taken the course where we go learn so much, we come back, we're so excited, we're so lit up, and then we get back into the regular routine of our practice because it's like, how do we implement everything in real time? It can be overwhelming.
Yeah, because it takes, we all know in dentistry, we don't have more time sometimes, right? Or how do you create more time for this? Because find the value of it, of prepping the patient before and post-op, so it starts with education and also, okay, let's get you to that first step. It was really needed for sure. It's great to have that resource that you give these courses as well. And so when you work with patients, for example, are you educating them on their nutrition or airway? Do you go into depth with that?
Yeah, when I work with patients, a lot of times I am looking at really their whole history, but I also love looking at mineral testing for patients and really looking at HTMA, hair tissue mineral analysis testing,
Okay.
because it
Oh, I
gives
love
us
that.
much insight into what's happening in the body, whether we're depleted or minerals are being dysregulated, or also just like the different systems of the body. Does the body actually have enough energy to heal? Right? Is it in a
Yes.
safe
Yeah,
state?
because if you're deficient, if people understand why this is important, this test that you're talking about
Yeah,
is because the minerals will, if the right amount of minerals will help you communicate with other cells, right? And
exactly.
if there's a deficiency where some people might not know that, oh, if you have metal in the mouth, might cause a zinc deficiency, and that will cause thyroid issues, and how much thyroid issues are rampant now,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And the mouth could be the last place they're looking at. So knowing, if I know I get a frequent full lab test, every 6 months where I'm at, and I love seeing where I can tweak things a little bit better. There's always a place to be vital, but ultimately, yes, we want to feel energize, and what it is on a cellular level, and it's the nutrients and why you're not absorbing it too. It could be something that's rooted in the mouth, or some people can have the MTHFR gene, things like that too, have a harder time methylating. So I think this is important work that you work with your patients. And sorry, I kind of stopped there because I want people to understand why checking minerals is important, because it's for cellular communication between the cells. So you want that, so that you want healthy cell levels and for energy. But continue on to what your program entails. But I really wanted to focus on why that's important.
Yeah, exactly. And I love that you touched on the thyroid, because the thyroid really is the master regulator of the body. And if we look at your minerals, and there's a specific ratio on this mineral test, it's how your calcium interacts with potassium. And we can have normal blood labs where our thyroid looks normal or even optimal, but cellularly, we may not be able to get the hormone into the cell if we don't have enough of certain minerals. Potassium is a big one. And so when we think about it being the master regulator, we are going to potentially have underactive thyroid symptoms if we can't use our thyroid hormone. So one of the big symptoms of underactive thyroid, especially in the mouth, is delayed healing or higher risk of gum and periodontal disease. So we might have a patient who is doing everything right, who has done periodontal therapy, but they're not responding as well. Their tissue integrity hasn't shifted. They still have inflammation. It's still not resolving. Well, we could look at these markers and understand, does the body actually have the energy and capacity to heal? Do they have the right nutrients to heal? So when I'm doing any of this testing and working with anyone on it, I'm always thinking of, does this person have the capacity to heal, whether that be their nervous system, their terrain, their hormones, right? Their mineral balance. Like it all is tied together. I'm never just looking at one system of the body ever. Of course, we talk about the mouth all the time because we're in the dental field, but I'm never just thinking about the mouth. I'm always thinking about how everything is connected.
Yeah, but that's great that you do have that background though, because oftentimes it is rooted in the mouth and absorbing in the gut. And that's why I go to tons of health conferences, not just dental ones, because I want to learn more
Yeah.
about the gut health. I want to learn about more the thyroid and cellular optimization. I know I've played around with peptides because they help with the cell, communicating with the cell and give them a little bit of a boost. And I'm curious, have you incorporated any peptides in your program?
I haven't currently with patients, but it is something that I'm diving deeper in and would love to start incorporating more of because there's so much research, there's so many great benefits, especially for oral health. I just think there's so much. I feel like I'm still diving into to all of
Yeah,
it.
I always say start with yourself. I'm like my own science project and seeing the benefits of it. And now I'm also curious to seeing patients that have been on it with a junction of changing diet and, checking the airway. I mean, airway is always most important and look at that first because the breath affects the nervous system and it has a spiral effect for inflammation in the body. But cellular health, I think that's the new way of treatment as well, is looking at it as a whole. How can we feed the cells? And nutrition is big. And unfortunately, our foods now is not grown in optimal soil to have the nutrients. So understanding where supplementation might be good, but instead of just like, oh yeah, I hear right now magnesium's great, or I should take this, test yourself. So you say you do a hair test, is that right?
Yep, exactly. So it's a hair test and it would look at magnesium, calcium, potassium, sodium, but also how those minerals interplay with each other. So it looks at
Mm.
your thyroid and adrenals at that cellular level, blood sugar.
Okay, I want to try this. I don't think I've ever done a hair test.
Yeah,
I want to
because
try this with you. I'd
absolutely.
be curious, because I have the labs, but I'd be curious what comes up even with the hair text, because I have seen for even checking for mercury poisoning, heavy metals, that it comes out in hair tests as well.
Exactly. Yeah. So it does show us heavy metals and toxins that you've been exposed to as well. And it also shows us how well can you actually eliminate them? Because sometimes we'll
Okay.
see on the hair test that it doesn't look like there's anything there, but we know it's there. So sometimes we're a poor eliminator. We can't actually excrete it. So when we're thinking about detox and we're thinking about mercury and things like this in dentistry, we need to make sure detox pathways are open. So this test would also give us information as to do we need to support those detox pathways? Of course, with conversation with our patients, we'll get some understanding if they're sweating regularly, going to the bathroom, breathing well, all the things. But it's definitely so important to think about our detox pathways being open before really any dental procedure.
Yeah. And what would be somebody walks in and you could tell their nervous system, they're in the sympathetic, they're just in that fight and flight. Their detox pathways are not open. I know everyone's individual, but on a broader scale, like what's some of the steps you would take that person through?
So I would want to know, are they going to the bathroom regularly, right? We should be going to the bathroom every day. So many people aren't. They're constipated. They're not going to the bathroom regularly. We want to be able to stimulate digestion. Now, really, there's a lot of things that we can do there. We can do further testing looking at gut health. But if we want to be including more fiber in the diet. We may want to bring in some probiotics. We want to make sure they're sweating regularly. A lot of people are working out or they're out in the sun and they are hot, but they're not necessarily sweating. If we're not sweating, we're not detoxing. And so we want to make sure that we actually can sweat. When we look at minerals, we think of sodium and potassium, right? Every cell in the body has this sodium potassium pump, which regulates cellular hydration. But if we don't have enough sodium and potassium, there's a good chance we're not sweating. There's a good chance we have dry mouth because we don't have that cellular hydration and that ability to pull things out of the cell, bring things into the cell. So I'd always want to look at that. We also think about hormones, right? A lot of women, perimenopause, menopause, hormones are shifting. And a lot of that hormone clearance, hormone conversion is happening in the liver. So a lot of times we need to add in some liver support for especially women when we're in that kind of age range of perimenopause, menopause. That can be a lot of different things. There's supportive herbs. There's things like glutathione, castor oil packs, right? It just depends on what's going on with our patient in particular.
Yes.
But we're always thinking, how can we support this? Nervous system, you talk a lot about that. There's so many things now for our nervous system. There's free things
Yes.
outside in nature, grounding, morning sunlight. But then there's so many biohacks, red light, and these vagus nerve stimulator devices. So it just depends what people are. I always say with the nervous system, find something you actually enjoy. Because if
Yeah, I
I'm
like
forced to do something you don't enjoy, that's dysregulating your nervous system even more.
that. That's true.
So you may not love guided meditation, but you may love EFT tapping, right? You just got to find the things that you enjoy, because those are going to be the things that really build that resilience and settle your nervous system down.
Yeah, so simplifying, fine, like keep it simple. Like really, nervous system regulation could be just as much as taking a few slow breath through the nose, right? And changes your physiology under 3 minutes. And or grounding, time in nature, hugging, someone that just where you feel safe. And so it doesn't have to be complicated where all the big biohack stuff, which I still love to try. I have PMF mats because unfortunately we don't live in an environment in a bubble. So these kind of just help re-regulate on a regular basis, sound healing and all of these modalities. So I think it's so important for people to understand that it's a whole body awareness. So you're kind of advocating to understand how the body works. You have the information for the mouth as well and how it's all interconnected. And I think that's so important. And on top of that, you're helping other providers that are kind of seeking this and how to incorporate it in dental practices. I think, are you finding a lot of resistance sometimes to even make that shift? Sometimes, maybe when you bring that up to other practitioner and say, hey, would you be open to changing your dental practice? Like what's the biggest pushback? Is it just because people just don't want to change the way they've been doing it all along, or the finance?
Yeah, I've been fortunate to work with some really amazing people that are just so ready for the change. But I will say the pushback does tend to be that they're not ready to overhaul their whole practice. And I also think sometimes the term holistic can have like this negative connotation. And I feel like some practitioners, some dentists are practicing more holistically or biologically, but aren't ready to tie that language to their name. But I would say, honestly, I've worked with so many practitioners at this point, and I also have colleagues and acquaintances who are more traditional or conventional dentists who reach out to me numerous times to say, okay, this patient came in seeking this. Can I send this patient to you because they want to know what supplements are best for their treatment? And I think that there is a lot of openness. I just think we're kind of like at this precipice of like, this movement is happening, right?
Yeah, yeah. If they like to or not, there's a new documentary coming out here that'll be part of. It's called Dentistry. So it's coming. And patients are seeking truth. Patients are, they're wanting this information, and it makes sense. And actually, I just had Dr. David Porter, and I have his book here. Have you read AIM? Have you read it?
I just ordered it recently.
You did? Okay. I think for simplifying, educating, your patients, your clients, I'm going to be recommending it to everybody because it really simplifies airway infections and metals. And in not too technical, but it makes sense. And I think if we educate people, that's going to be supply and demand. And I think it's just important. This movement is happening. So it's going to be where they're going to want to implement them. And maybe they're having troubles calling themselves holistic or biological, maybe because right now, in the dental community, you're going to be kind of positioned one side or the other. And there's obviously a heavier side of just not biological dentists at this point. And you're not, you part of this group, and you don't want to be an outsider. right? In your field. You don't want to be mocked. You don't want to feel like an outsider. You want to be part of a community. It's a hard career. You want to be outside, but in the same time, they shouldn't be one and the other in a separation. It should be a bridge. They can communicate together. There's no I'm better than you. They should be just a bridge that, hey, it's okay. I was there too. And this is what I learned. And this is how I'm doing the work. I always tell providers now, go shadow a biological dentist, be curious and be open-minded. And a lot of times it'll just happen by seeing it from just patients in their chair. Just start asking deeper questions. I know as a hygienist, we see a whole story in the mouth. The minute somebody opens their mouth, it's very personal. And we also see the long list of medications that could be affecting them long term. They don't understand that maybe some of the medications is actually causing the dry mouth, causing the ripple effect with their gut issues and whole body effects. So bringing that awareness is hard because sometimes you're like, well, I'm stepping out of my lane, right? So I love that you're being brave enough to just be like, no, not enough people, not enough dental hygienists are speaking about this, and you're providing this program. I mean, I don't know many other dental hygienists that are providing this right now. And so I'm honored to have you on and to share that that's available.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I feel like it's so important. I think one of the biggest reasons that I share so much on social and I create these courses is because I don't want to hold this information to myself. I've done so much education. I'm always doing education, right? I'm always going deeper. But I think that when I first got started in biological dentistry, I was fortunate. I had amazing mentors from around the world, like unbelievable. But also, it was so much at once. It's so much information to take in. And so, what I wanted to do is be able to kind of streamline it and simplify it. So, you can actually take this information and apply it tomorrow in your practice, right? That's my goal is you can listen to one of my modules in my course and tomorrow you can go into practice and change the conversations you're having with patients, change how you're approaching the care, change how you're treatment planning, because really this information should be readily accessible, right? And it isn't. It's hard to
And I love that you say prepping the language. Sometimes they don't have the language, right? And because that was not taught. So simplifying it and having that one module to be like, okay, yeah, now take that next step and apply it. And that's kind of what I've been doing too, is just like incorporating breath in the dental practice. Yeah, it's something new, but it doesn't take more time. It doesn't take more. It's just going to be something new to implement, right? And that's kind of what you're doing for the practitioner, is that it's just these little tweaks here and there, and it's going to allow them to probably feel more purposeful, knowing to see the change in their patients and what they're able to provide them. I think that'd be huge for a provider to know that, wow, I'm seeing these huge changes in their health, and it has a ripple effect to their families as well.
Yeah, I think that is definitely one of the most powerful things working with people, but also just working in biological practice is patients' health is completely changing. Not only their health, but the health of their families. Like once people have this information, have experienced it themselves, they start bringing their whole family, right? It changes generational health. It has such a ripple effect. It's such a powerful experience. And then I know when I'm working with practitioners who are making the shift, I will get calls and messages saying, oh my God, you will never believe this patient, how well they healed. This happened. They told me this after we removed their mercury, like everything changed, their brain fog lifted, all these things changed. And it's just so powerful to see that, especially in different things to your practice. And all of a sudden it just clicks and things really start to shift in that positive direction.
Yeah, I love that. And that's it. It just clicks. They have to see it themselves, and then it gets exciting. It really does. You're like, oh, this is actually, the periodontal disease is, is actually healing, and we're getting to the root cause. And people now are, gosh, there's so many stories of people where you remove the metal, and all of a sudden, there was one great story that David Potter shared. His patient had MS, was in a wheelchair, removed all the metals, did a whole detox, could walk again, and is healthy again. So So get curious, as a provider. And I think for patients too, I find they get kind of overwhelmed when I do send them to, biological dentists that I love. And they're like, okay, I always say, here's first step. But now I'm saying, here's first step. Read this book.
Yes.
Then find the right provider, ask the right questions. Someone like you too would be a great resource to get knowledgeable, figure out, as far as the nutrition, your deficiency in, and kind of use us as a directory. Where do I go? Who do I see? And what's my next step? Just seeing one step at a time, because I do find patients are like, well, oh yeah, I definitely have airway issue. Oh, I have a root canal. What does that mean? I say, okay, I'm not here to create fear, because that's even worse for your nervous system. I'm just trying to educate you. And first step first, educate yourself. Listen to all these podcasts and you'll see a different way to explain it, but a different way to incorporate them out to the entire body and what's affecting it, what resources are out there, and what's, just one step at a time. But what's going to happen though, if you do this now, 10 years down the road, the vitality that you're going to feel for doing the work now, and an investment, of course, investment to be with you as a guide. This is an investment. And I think especially as women, we don't like to invest in ourselves, for sometimes it's everybody else first, but you're also have to take care of you before you could take care of everybody else, especially as a mom. I always say the best advice I had was put the oxygen mask on for me first, take care of me, heal me, so then I could better show up for my children. So I think what you're doing right now is providing just that knowledge, that safe place, that groundedness, your information. I love all your everyone go follow, Amber White. What's your hashtag again?
It's naturally Amber White.
Natural. I love it. I love it. I mean, your content is fantastic, and it's root cause. It is awareness, education. There's a lot of junk out there when you're strolling, but not yours. All my friends now, it's not. It's all in the right direction, and it's important work. And I'd love for you to share, just maybe some patients you've had, some stories that you've seen the progression. People love to hear stories, and where you're seeing them, they're living with vitality. Because if they make the choice today to start working on themselves, this is 10 years from now. How do you want to feel? Right? So what habits are you going to do today to feel with vitality? Because for me, I do the same. I look at my grandfather, he's 97. He dances 3-4 times a week. He walks miles and miles. I mean, he is a vitality. He doesn't have a long list of meds that he's on. He is happy and lives on his own, has his car. I was like, that's where I want to end, At 97, living like that. So what do I have to do now for habit wise? And a lot of it is doing labs for myself every 6 months, doing all the supplementation and nutrition. So I'd love to hear some stories of your clients that you've had, that you've seen it, you've witnessed it.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like there's so many. There's so many in practice, but one that's standing out to me just as we're talking about the mineral testing and everything we're talking about is I had a client who has Hashimoto's, and she had come for a hair test. She had been out of work for over a year because she just physically could not get out of bed, exhausted. We did her hair test. She had a lot of depletion. She was completely depleted in the core minerals. With Hashimoto's, we think about autoimmune, right? So it's underactive thyroid, but an autoimmune component to that. And her antibodies were 10,000. Now, our antibodies should be as close to 0 as possible. 10,000 is a really high number. But in talking with her and going through her history and her intake, we discovered that she had a root canal on a tooth that is associated with the thyroid meridian. Now, this tooth had been monitored. She had always brought it up with her dentist, and they just said, it's okay. We're just going to keep an eye on it. We're going to watch it.
So she had a gut feeling about it, right? Always. Yes.
And, through talking, something is going on with this tooth. She had only had 2-dimensional x-rays at this point, the traditional x-rays. So I recommended she see a biological dentist and have a cone beam x-ray, which is going to give us that 3D image. And there was recurrent infection around this tooth. Huge infection. So she ended up having it removed, following all the biological principles, using PRF and laser and all of the things. And within 3 months' time, her antibodies had dropped down to like 500.
Wow.
Energy was back. She was like getting back to work. Just like everything changed for her. And then within 6 months' time, I want to say they were down in the 100 range, but it was an immediate, right? That was the root cause of her Hashimoto.
But the hardest part too, people don't understand, is that you're not going to feel pain. Most of the time, you don't feel pain. So they don't know to look at that. They don't know to ask for a CBCT scan, the 3D scan, to look at that. And look at how crippling it was for her. And, you get lost in a system, and then you get lost into lots of pharmaceuticals to treat the Hashimoto. And then that's a spiral effect for her gut health, for her oral health, the dry mouth, and everything, losing the hair. So for you for her to find someone like you that can get to the root cause and get her on the right track back to working and finding vitality, what a gift. What a gift.
Unbelievable. I mean, when I get emotional with like that, because it's, we can really change so much, but if she never knew that, she wouldn't have been able to investigate further and seek another second opinion, because sometimes we just are, okay, we're watching it. And that's a big thing that I've never agreed with in a more conventional model, is this watch and wait game where we're just
periodontal disease. How often would I go, oh, well, we're just watching, there's some bone loss, we'll watch that it doesn't go any further. I'm like, what?
We're just waiting for the root to actually take hold, to actually progress. And there's so many things that we can do in the interim to be proactive. And so I think that's such a huge piece, and just being able to intervene for those patients, right, that we're watching because they don't technically qualify for this advanced treatment, this advanced scaling appointment. It's like there's so much we can do to bring down that inflammation, bring down that bleeding response, build a healthier oral environment.
We're probably working against, insurance. Of course, it's expensive. So people finding the value of these other treatments that might not be covered. That's where I see that a lot, which is really sad, right? We give away our power for our health. And so also shining a light as to how this is so imperative for vitality. So spending that amount on this care will give you the vitality for years to come after that.
Yeah. And even what you said in the very beginning, it's just being your own advocate and being able to have this information and knowledge to say, I don't want to wait till my 6-month checkup to see if this has progressed to that next level. But I don't think a lot of patients understand that that's what we're waiting for. That's what we're watching for, is for this to progress. And I think it's just having these conversations and really just keeping that dialogue open, but also just like really being able to be that advocate for yourself. And also as a hygienist, as someone in the field, advocate for your patients.
Yes.
And like really showing up for them. And
yes, because now I temp, and I don't always temp at biological dent. And now this is why I feel I need to do it more often, because when I'm working at another dental office, sometimes I get the side eye by the dentist, because I'll talk to the patient about their airway. Mm-hmm. I'll talk about, hey, have you heard, get educated. Now, of course, I could share my podcast and books, but it's interesting, because then the exam comes, and then the patient's like, hey, she was telling me about, airway and how important that is. And the dentist just doesn't even go into it, And so I do feel that for patients, don't be afraid to ask questions first. And what you mentioned too, if their gut instinct is saying there's something off, they can't pinpoint it, find a dentist that will trust your intuition.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Instead of like, well, I don't see anything there. No, you need to find a dentist. I'm lucky enough that a lot of dentists I've had on here, they're like, oh yeah, no, I trust the patient's intuition. They spend enough time in the exam to really connect with them, to truly listen, which oftentimes it's in and out, right? 10 minute exam, and that's all you'll get for the dentist. So that's not a lot of time, and a lot of time for sure. Patients don't feel comfortable to ask them to question what they're about to do. But I'm hoping to advocate to no, don't be afraid to ask questions and trust your gut instinct. You know how often? I mean, I've been one to not trust my gut. I'm very intuitive as well, and I've kind of pushed it down, and but now no. That's my guide, is my intuition, God given, and it's always the right way. So I think that's just important work. And before we kind of finish, is there any other topics or stories you'd want to share, or any of resources? Because I just love what you're doing, and I can't wait to share, to have resources. That's what I feel like I am. I'm a resource. I could line you up with some of the best biological dentists, therapists, health experts. And for you, I think for the dental community to know who, if you want to make that switch, you have someone that can guide you through. Patients that want to do the hair test, if there's anything you wanted to really talk about and share, or another story, I'd love to. I don't want to miss anything.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I love what you said about just like listening to your intuition too, because I will always say, your body better than anybody else, right? You're going to know when something's off before any type of diagnosis, diagnostic imaging, anything. You can feel in your body, and it is not pushing that intuition down, but actually listening to it. And also, I think the biggest thing is our bodies are so intelligent. And when they are in the environment, they have the ability to self-regulate and heal. And I think that's really important, especially for anyone who is the patient listening, is that you're never too far gone to bring your body back into balance and to be able to self-regulate and heal. There may be treatment options, there may be different things that are required, but we all have this ability. Our bodies are so innately beautifully designed, and it's just really honoring that and really creating the conditions for healing. And so I think when I'm working with someone, whether it be with a hair test or that, it's, we want to design those conditions so your body can self-regulate and heal. And it looks different for everybody, right?
And no matter what age, I love how you said it didn't matter when you start. Like, you could be 86 and start today, and your body will know how to heal, right? But you got to prep the body. I love that. And that's so true. And allow to get your body in a state where it can heal and learn how to. So there's never too late. I love how you said that.
Yeah. And I think for practitioners too, it's a lot of times, especially in entrepreneurship, business ownership, we're going to be on our own healing journey too. And especially if you're shifting your practice from this more traditional insurance-driven model to this more biological whole body approach, sometimes one of the biggest things, one of the most impactful things that we can do is actually slow down, right? We're so used to moving from one appointment to the next, running behind, all of the things, but sometimes it's slowing down to allow yourself not only to get into that state to be the healer, to get into that healing state yourself, but also to be able to see what's right in front of you, to be able to hear and be able to listen to the stories of your patients. I also think one of the other most important things too is like when you're moving to this model is to be so sure of your core values, of your vision, of your mission, and why you want to do this work. Because once you're so clear on that and your team is so clear on that, that's when everything really starts to shift.
I can see that. I can see that, to get the team to understand the why and how we treat. And I think that is empowering because it provides purpose. And then a story, I'm sure after stories and patient, then it gives them excitement, right? They can have the proof of how they can provide their patients with vitality and health. And that is so important. And you're right. It's just, I love how you said, allow for more time. And that's the hardest part, I think, in dentistry. Everything's so expensive, right? I would say a dental chair is similar to a massage chair, sort of,
Yeah.
And it's like 4 times the amount, right? So everything is really expensive. So of course the dentist feels to stay afloat, it's got to have, my husband used to have 3 columns, then 3 hygienists. And it's just, patient to patient. And, in the beginning it was 6 days a week. And it's, wow, slowing down, a lot of them will be like, well, how am I going to pay the bills, right? How am I going to stay afloat and pay everyone? But long term, where do you want to be at with your health as a practitioner as well? Find ways to slow down so it protects you as a physician. And you see, like you said, you'll be able to treat the patient better if you show up in that kind of rest and digest state. They'll mirror your nervous system. And so it's a win-win. It's hard to reprogram people to think about that because we always were taught from a young age, the more productive I am, the better, the more accolades I get. I remember thinking, wow, look how many things I accomplished in one day. I worked out at 4:45 a.m. I grabbed the kids, got them ready for school. Then I went to work from this time to this time. Then I picked up the kids and then I made dinner. And then I got ready. Like I used to be like, yes, I did that. But then, long term, oh my gosh, I was so depleted, depleted, and my health paid for it. And luckily now, but it's taken over a decade where I've been able to repair and ask the right questions and dig more in my own health. You talked about Hashimoto, and in a decade ago, I was so fatigued all the time. Losing my hair and the gut health, and I would go see, doctors are, the top of their field. And I'm told, oh, well, you have GERD. So here's this prescription. But of course, my intuition is like, no, I'm not going to take that. I've always been more into what's the root cause. That's not going to help me. Or I go see somebody else and they're like, oh, 800 milligrams of ibuprofen. And I'm like, what? And no. So I keep digging and digging. So I'm telling you right now with my books, I explain my journeys because I had to dig a lot to get to the knowledge that I have right now. It wasn't readily available, right? It took over a decade of asking why and getting to the root. So this is why I'm using my podcast now to help educate people now before they wait. It's too long, before they're being diagnosed for Hashimoto's and they can't work for a year. Can you imagine the financial burden of that now? So use those finances now for your health. So you're not spending it later on when you can't work. You can't work. I remember my husband took a month, he had almost 6 weeks off because of back pain. That was very scary. When you're the sole, owner of the practice. We had associates, but really he was the one generating the most. That is so scary. But they work themselves like that till their bodies can't function anymore. So yes, the slowing down is important now for 10 years down the road to prevent burnouts. I mean, that is high for dentistry, really, really high. It's really hard to find all the statistics. And I think because so many of them are silently kind of suffering and they're not talking about it much, but they are. I hear it all the time. Ever since my husband passed, I had many dentists share their close calls themselves, and many of them are still feeling stuck. And so the slowing down is very important, and finding purpose as well. I think a lot of them have lost kind of purpose. It's like you said, insurance driven. I always think there's got to be another better way. I had the lady on about insurance and how she's trying to pivot where dentists create their own type of insurance, like in-house, and so then you're not giving away the power to other insurance companies. But something's got to shift for the dental industry because it is, I feel like such an important field. And I think more and more now physicians are going to communicate with dentists, send patients to the dentist, biological dentists first, and work together, right? Instead of just so separated, like building a bridge, kind of like what you're doing. You're building a bridge between all modalities, right? Whole body health instead of just one area that we're looking at, because you saw that in your chair, right? So I think it's important. And if anyone wants to work with you, if you could share your website or any links that might be appropriate, and I will have it in the show notes too. But if you just say for anyone listening.
Yeah, of course. So Instagram at Naturally Amber White. My website is just naturallyamberwhite.com. So really easy to find.
Perfect. I love that. Well, thank you so much for being on and sharing your wisdom. Continue the wonderful work that you're doing, and I'll be looking forward to sharing with you. So, thank you very much for everyone listening today. It truly means a lot to me. And if this resonated for you and you want other people to kind of start advocating for their own health, please like and subscribe. It'll help me reach globally, write a review. And, I always say, education is power. Dr. David Porter's book, AIM, this could be kind of first step. Get it educated. Listen to all these dentists that I've had on as well. Follow along with Amber. This will get you the information to do that first step. And we all want you. Ultimately, I'm so passionate about health, and I really want everyone to live life with vitality, because it has a ripple effect to our children as well, right? So let's change the generation. I can't help but look at young kids going, oh my gosh, they're a downward spiral for their health, right? And so it's changing generations. So thank you very much for listening. And this also, I'm sharing all this so nobody ever feels alone, because I know it was very lonely for me to find out all this information as to why my health was declining, why my husband's health was declining. So this is a place where we share truth, story, hope, and thank you very much.